Nurbits is a puzzle game where the mechanics are modeled after neuroscience principles. In the game, the player hooks up microchips to get robot bands to play music. The chips in the game are based on neurons and function in many similar ways. In fact, after completing a puzzle, the chips the player is hooked up visually morph into neurons. Each of the different types of chips in the game are modeled after a specific type of neuron. The stimulus chip is like a sensory neuron receiving input. Each puzzle is like a neural network that the player is building, and the stimulus chip needs to be placed at the beginning of that network. In the game, signal flows from left to right, so it needs to go on the left of the other chips that it's sending a signal to. The goal of the game is to hook up all of the correct note chips on the green goal areas on the grid without having any note chips on the wrong notes. Note chips can be thought of like motor neurons synapsing upon muscles to get the robot to play the note. Chips in the game can only reach other chips that are close to them. To connect note chips that are not in range, you need to use the relay chip, which is like a special type of neuron called an interneuron. Interneurons route signals throughout the brain and nervous system, connecting sensory and motor neurons. Like neurons, chips have a threshold they have to reach before they will fire and play a note. As you progress in the game, chips start to have thresholds higher than 1. Initially, you learn that you need to send signals to them from multiple chips. In neuroscience, this process is called summation. The player is then introduced to the excitatory chip, which has a positive signal strength of 2, double that of the relay and note chips. The player has to be careful with these. If they overstimulate a chip, it dies. In neuroscience, this is called excitotoxicity. If the player places a chip on the grid and doesn't hook it up to anything within 2 loops of the timer bar, it will also die. Here we are trying to model neuroplasticity and pruning. Earlier I mentioned that to complete a puzzle you can't have a wrong note hooked up. Luckily we have an inhibitory chip that can help you with that. By sending a negative signal to the chips it connects to, it can keep them from firing and playing the wrong note, so you can complete the puzzle. The last type of chip is the broken chip, a chip that is really just in your way, blocking you from connecting through it. The neuroscience concept we are modeling here is neural injury. A glial scar can make the brain form new connections around it, just like you will have to do to solve these puzzles. After completing all the puzzles, you get to see the robot band perform the song you've been assembling, and hopefully you've learned how neurons communicate along the way.